You really want me to do this? You really want me to look like a hack? Like I'm fishing for clicks or something? Just because both the Nostalgia Critic and the Blockbuster Buster had to review this movie as soon as it was released, I gotta do the same thing? I guess reviewer dibs is a thing of the past. We gotta all now do what everyone else is doing just to stay relevant. Okay, now that I've pissed off half my fan base with that rant, I do get why you think I should review this. I can't speak for the aforementioned reviewers, but you know that I have mentioned before that Kim Possible was one of my favorite cartoons of this century. Heck, TV Trash's name came from TV Trash Heap, the TV Land parody network shown in the episode about the Fearless Ferret, in case you didn't know. This show was right up there with Phineas and Ferb for one that just runs with the same nonsensical insanity that cartoons of years past were known for. And it's among the biggest examples of how Disney can still be creative and original when they put their minds to it. Maybe that's why this thing drew so much ire. I mean, for all the issues I have with the Descendants series, at least those movies were something new, sort of. And it doesn't help that this thing comes out when making live-action adaptations of their beloved animated productions is Disney's thing nowadays. What's next? Is there gonna be a live-action Phineas and Ferb movie? Please don't let there be a live-action Phineas and Ferb movie. So yes, this Disney Channel movie has been on everyone's radar in the online community, and I'm going to keep getting asked questions about it until I say my piece on it. So let's get this over with. This is the live-action Kim Possible movie. Now be forewarned, this is not going to be one of my standard reviews. I'm not giving you a play-by-play of the movie itself while throwing in as many snarky one-liners as I can muster. I'm making this choice in the hopes that it will be somewhat different than those other reviews, which for the record I haven't watched as of this recording, but also because I'm still not sure if this was supposed to be a reboot or a prequel or something in between, so I'm not completely sure what to judge the movie on. Here's the summary. The movie seems to take place just as Kim Possible is beginning high school, at which point her gig of being your basic average girl here to save the world is already in full force. We see this in an opening scene where she and Ron Stoppable save a scientist from Professor Dementor. Of course, the main plot naturally centers around Dr. Draken, who gets sprung from prison by Shigo for the who-knows-what time, and now he's on a mission to find Kim Possible's spark that supposedly makes her great at everything, while she's busy screwing up at everything in school. It's here she meets this new girl named Athena, and long story short, Athena is revealed to be an android built by Draken to infiltrate Kim's life, squash her confidence, and then get her captured so he can transfer her essence into himself. Yeah, there are probably so many fetishists that can go wild with this thing. Kim stops the transfer, and this somehow causes Draken to regress in age.
Okay, just got dumb.
And Athena has a whole face turn where she sacrifices herself to allow Kim and everyone else to escape Draken's exploding lair, because that had to happen. But they're able to put her back together and make her a full member of the team. Yeah, because adding a new character like this full-time always works out. And the movie ends with Kid Draken looking to infiltrate Kim's school to set up a sequel that we sadly are probably going to get. Okay, so let's try to start with some of the good stuff from this thing. The casting is actually pretty decent in most roles. The teen actors they got for Kim and Ron are passable as playing live versions of these characters, even though Sadie Stanley definitely has much longer hair than the animated Kim for who knows what reason. The same can be said for Draken and Shigo here. No, I don't have a problem with Draken not having completely blue skin here. Heck, I don't recall they ever even brought up why he turned blue in the series as best as I recall, so whatever. And yes, it is awesome that they managed to get Patton Oswalt to reprise his role as Dementor. He was pretty much the best thing in the movie, which is why of course we never saw him again after the opening sequence. However, they do get points off for casting this guy for who I assume is supposed to be Mr. Barkin. Seriously, you couldn't get back Patrick Warburton? The guy's practically a real-life cartoon character, so he'd fit in as well as Oswald. Also, Allison Hannigan as Kim's mother. Yeah, way to make me feel old. Also, the set designs are pretty incredible. There was substantial effort to make sets like the high school and Kim's home as authentic to the cartoon as possible, which they probably weren't expected to do. It does harken back to a movie like Speed Racer, where there really was an attempt to make a cartoon in real life. Yes, I didn't think the Speed Racer movie was that bad, don't at me! And to be honest, there could be some funny gags once in a while in this thing. For instance, there's this one scene where Draken needs a whole new power source for his lair, and finds that Shigo just bought a new one off Amazon.
Get with the times, Doc. Nobody leaves the lair anymore.
It makes me feel slightly better about buying too many of my RuneScape supplies from the Grand Exchange. And yes, having Kim's mom and Nana team up with her for the final battle was pretty cool. But with all that having been said, yeah, it's time to get into the real issues with this film. I'm not completely outraged that so many plot elements are clearly lifted from So the Drama. I was never expecting this movie to craft something completely new. Where I do have problems starts with asking why this movie takes place as Kim is beginning high school. To be fair, the cartoon was itself kind of all over the place as far as Kim's age and class. I seem to recall she was in junior high for the first season, and then they just skipped her ahead into high school in the later years with almost little notice or fanfare. But yeah, here it definitely contributes as to not knowing where this takes place in the continuity or if this is a reboot altogether. And as for why they felt the need to start this movie at the beginning of her high school life, yeah, we'll get to that later. But mostly the problems can be summed up in two categories. The first being that everything just mostly seems dull and lifeless compared to its animated counterpart. And it does kind of go back to what I talked about when reviewing Reanimated and my counterpoints to what Mr. Enter said reviewing the same. There are just a lot of small elements that don't seem to work as well when converting the setting from animation to real live action. Probably the biggest issue is pacing and speed. Characters just overall move much slower than their animated counterparts, and it really contributes an image of everything dragging. This is something you see from almost the beginning with their attempt to duplicate the show's original title sequence shot for shot. There's just not the tempo that made the shots work with the theme song's beat, and that feeling of lethargy carries on through most of the movie. A lot of it maybe could have worked if there was more effort put into making the action and characters themselves more cartoony, but definitely not with the budget of a Disney Channel movie. And that may be most reflected in Ron. Yes, I said before that Sean Glambroni is a reasonable enough facsimile, even getting down Will Friedel's voice good enough, but even still, he just can't get the full facial expressions that the animated Ron was also known for, let alone making his pratfalls seem more cartoonish and entertaining. And then there's the CGI Rufus, but the less said about him, the better. Then we have these small bits here and there that do seem to ridicule the original source. Like, they had to change Kim from wanting to be a cheerleader to wanting to be on the soccer team? Because what? We're going back to those old cliches about cheerleaders not being athletes or able to be taken seriously? Get the F out with that! And then this jab at the old midriff-bearing tank top she used to wear for her mission gear?
I don't know, I guess wearing the same thing all the time kind of felt cartoony.
You know, if you had just not brought it up, you might have thought anything of it. Instead, you intentionally point it out, thus making it a point of contention. But then we have the second major issue, which is the whole atmosphere that tries to make Kim somewhat less than she was in the original cartoon. By having her struggle at things like in school, it seems like these writers were trying to tone down her character and give her flaws as if that was needed to make her more relatable. Like, she has to be intimidated by Bonnie's actions to show she's not perfect, that even if she can thwart an evil megalomaniac, she's still just a little kid inside, that when she straps on a jetpack, somehow she's in total control, but inside those school walls, Bonnie's the one in charge and Kim can't stop her? The hell? What made Bonnie and Kim's relationship great to watch was that yes, Bonnie was the stereotypical mean girl alpha bitch, but Kim was her kryptonite. She was a pest to Kim, but not someone who could legitimately intimidate her because Kim knew she was as good, if not better than Bonnie. Heck, the best way the show depicted as Kim being flawed was whenever she became too obsessed with needing to show up Bonnie, which was a result of her self-confidence. Those instances were examples of Kim needing to be told, you know you're better than her, you don't have to play her game to show it. It actually took me a while to figure out just why someone like Kim, who admittedly does at times push the boundaries of being a Mary Sue archetype, still comes off as a likable character and good protagonist. And it finally hit me. Kim Possible is a human female version of Superman. She is someone who is admittedly better physically and mentally than many of her compatriots, but is someone who uses her abilities to help make the world a better place and instill hope in others. The message is that even if you're not as gifted as she clearly is, you should never stop trying your hardest and working to succeed at what you are good at and to take pride in whatever abilities you have. I get the feeling these movie writers wanted to throw in the cliche of even someone like Kim struggling at something we all had to deal with in life, the perils of starting high school, to show that even after becoming a superhero she can't avoid these tribulations, but I don't think anyone wanted to see that in this setting. That works for Buffy because she had to keep her superhero life a secret and thus couldn't fall back on it when people humiliated her in her personal life. People know that Kim saves the world on a regular basis, so if someone like Bonnie tries to bring her down, there should be plenty of people who do look up to Kim enough to help bring her back up. Maybe Kim could have had these struggles with self-confidence at some point in her life, but it would have been before or just as she began her life as a do-gooder, not somewhere in the middle of it as this movie is set. The film probably would have worked best as a pseudo-prequel to the original series, something that in theory would take place shortly after she got that first call for help assignment like we saw in A Stitch in Time. But the film's creators clearly wanted to have their cake and eat it too by still placing the film in the high school setting it was familiar in. Overall, the 2019 live-action Kim Possible movie isn't terrible, but it still just doesn't feel like anything anyone outside the Disney brass really wanted, especially not fans of the original animated series. There are some good pieces to it, but it does look like an unnecessary reboot of a franchise that wasn't even 20 years old at the time. And its existence does contribute to the growing concern that Disney is finally losing faith in animation. And what's sadder about that is, there are still current examples that not only can Disney animated television still work, but even a reboot of an older animated property can not only be as good as the original, but maybe even better. I think you all know what I'm referring to. And we'll be talking about that in the next Patreon review video. Oh yes, my rowdy friends, woohoo!